Hey guys, Montel here, and thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. We talk about the cannabis industry in every way, shape, and form that we can here. And one of the things I want to kind of talk a little bit about today is about innovation and the fact that we're in an industry that has proven itself to be an essential service in majority of the states that have now legalized cannabis. And though we have done a lot of research, and there is still a lot of ongoing research going on right now when it comes to scientifically digging into the plant itself and trying to efficaciously understand some of its properties and give more of a medical, I guess, slant towards what the plant is capable of doing. But in a lot of ways, this industry has been stagnant in some areas, relying on techniques. We have a side of this business that has been around now for 60, 70 years. And of course, some of the people who, I say 60 or 70 years in the way it is now, some of the people who have been some of the legacy growers have most of the, some of the most phenomenal information when it comes to actually growing the plant. However, we've been doing so using techniques in some ways and using equipment in some ways that's 40, 50, 60 years old until now. And, one of the most important things is, in any industry is innovation, to keep moving forward, to make sure that we understand that there are things that we can do to make the processes faster, better, more efficient. Learning and innovation go hand in hand. The arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for today. That's a quote from a man by the name of William Pollard. And my guest today is an entrepreneur, an inventor, a U.S. Navy veteran. He's considered a distinguished inventor in the cannabis industry whose drive has earned him a reputation as a pioneer in automation in the emerging agricultural cannabis sector. His vision has led his company, which is called GreenBroz, Inc., to become a world leader in automated harvesting solutions. Cullen Raichart, thank you so much for being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel, sir.
Thank you, Montel. It's a real pleasure to be here. And that's a great intro to the whole segment that we specialize in.
I know. I've said I thank you for that because I think it's really important. I was really pleased to get an opportunity to talk with you because I know that you are working on innovation, and the innovation that you work on that help us produce the product is going to spark more innovation in other areas of the product. One of the things that I've been working on is really very funny. I've been in this business now, really, full nose, hook, line, and sinker since 2000. And I often kick myself because I'll come up with an idea and I go, we got to do this, and then 2 years later, somebody does it. And part of the problem is that I run my mouth too much because especially here on this podcast, I'm talking about things all the time, and I give up a lot of ideas. I have a couple of them that I've been working on recently to actually change the relationship that the consumer has with the product, giving, the ability to have multiple different new kinds of delivery techniques that I think that, I talked about 5 years ago, they're now coming to fruition today. And, I come up with a couple of them in the last couple of months and, I'm literally, I'm tired of just talking about them. So I'm actually trying my best to produce some of these now to get them out there and make it easier for the consumer and easier for the producer to buy products and provide new innovative ways for consumers to actually consume. So, but before we start talking about that, let's talk a little bit about your background. Now, you were in the military, right?
I did. I'm a Gulf War I veteran. I spent a couple years over there. I actually did 5 years total, and then got out and started working corporate America. I had my government clearances, my top secret and stuff like that. So that helped me to kind of get into defense
You were in
contracting.
You were in the Navy, right? So
I
when did you
was.
enlist? When did you enlist in the Navy?
I was. I'm killing myself here, but I think I got in '87 and I got out in '93. So it was right
Gotcha.
5 years.
Well, we share a little time on active duty together because I was in during that period of time that you came in. I saw some of the ships that you were on. You were on what, the Lincoln, and what else?
Carl Vinson.
Vincent. Yeah, I was on
Yeah.
the Vincent's. I was on the Vincent's sister ship, which is the Kitty Hawk. We
Yeah.
did the entire Indian Ocean deployment. As a matter of fact, we were the first 180-day plus deployment in the Indian Ocean, since World War II. And I
Yeah.
was
So they make those big nuclear ships. You can stay out there forever.
absolutely. All you got to do is get some food and water.
That's it.
Well, you don't even have to get water because you make your own water.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Absolutely. What was your role? What was your job in the service? What did you
I
do?
was an avionics technician. I was working on S3 Viking, so I was a flight deck guy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, so you spend your time in service and you got out. How did you transition into the cannabis space?
Well, it was kind of a journey from the Navy to actual cannabis, but I went through a couple of different iterations. I got into IT and then was contracting for the defense messaging, which is basically email for the government. I did the NMCI project, and then um, was just kind of always been an inventor and mechanical, and just couldn't really see myself not going down this road on my own. My whole family is entrepreneurs and small business owners, and working for corporate America was great because it was so consistent, but it was also just not really where I wanted to be. So I kind of jumped out on my own with an invention, a dry sift machine, and then that was in like 2011. Yeah,
Mhm.
and then just kind of took off from there.
But now let's back up because your background and this entrepreneurial spirit really came from you growing up in a family that was a family full of entrepreneurs, right? Your parents,
That's correct. Yeah.
your
Yeah,
parents owned what?
my parents owned a printing business. So back in the days when they used to actually have printers, big offset printing instead of what we have now, all these copying machines. These great tools that you have at home. Back in the days, you had to actually have that stuff printed by a company, and that's what we did. So we had a shop that had a bunch of printing presses, and I learned how to run a printing press and do all the work around the shop. And that's where I started figuring out how to repair stuff, and was always good at taking stuff apart. So that was what my parents were into. Now my brothers have a solar business in Colorado. One of my brothers has his own realty company, and so it's just kind of what we do. It's just what we were kind of part of what our family has always done.
Something that took place in your parents' business is really what kind of inspired you to really, really grind, dig deep into the vision of inventing. Didn't your parents like purchase a machine that didn't work or something? Like, tell me, it was a great story.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that drives me about equipment. Quality is so important, especially when you're a small company and you make these massive investments. And my parents, figured out, got the money, got it together, and made I think it was $750,000 for a piece of equipment. And then in the '80s, that was a lot. It's a lot now,
You
but it
ain't
was a
kidding.
lot then. And the machine delivered from overseas, and they had delivered. We don't know exactly what happened, but we think that it was at some point in time was set down hard or something, but it never registered. And in registration is the key to four color and printing. I mean, if you can't get two colors to line up, you don't get full color. So anyway, it never registered, and basically the overhead on the machine, and it wasn't earning any money, cost us the business ultimately. And I think my parents got divorced shortly after that, and I can't put all those things together, but they all were together in my mind. As a kid, you're just like catastrophe, and it just all fell apart. And then I just remember that, like, I went with my dad to the auctions to find equipment. We searched for stuff. We went and learned about all the different equipment, and finally made a purchase based on what we had been educated in, and then got a bad piece of equipment. So that's always been in the forefront of my mind when I make equipment. We first of all, we try and make it easy to use, and second, we try and make it as durable as it possibly can be. I have machines that I sold in 2012, 2013 that are still out in the marketplace. And like sometimes they send them back and they tell me to refurbish them, and we do. So I mean, it's that, and it's it's reputation building, but it's also, to me, it's a connect to to the important people, which are the people who are buying my equipment, because their success ultimately means I'll be successful.
Well, let's go back again now, because I mean, okay, you're working for communications and messaging for the U.S. military. That's a far stretch from that to cannabis. So, talk to me a little bit about how this transition took place.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm living in California, and I was at that time had just started a new relationship with a woman who had two kids, and I had two kids, so we had a family of four. And in Southern California, it's expensive, and so I was struggling with, even though I was making a really good living with what I was doing, I it wasn't taking care of everything that we needed. So we at that time there was the 215 uh, proposition and the medical cannabis proposition, and my dad actually was in medical cannabis growing, so we started a collective and we started growing. I started growing medical cannabis. I had all my patient lists and all this stuff that was required, and
Hold
that's
on,
how I got into it.
hold on 1 second though. Now, how did your dad transition from printing to cannabis? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, did the light bulb go off and
Yeah,
they passed the law, so let's get into this, or
yeah, that's a crazy story in and of itself. He actually didn't intentionally transition. He had moved he moved a portion of the company he was able to salvage out to California, basically right outside of wine country,
his
and
printing company?
yeah, and so he was doing that business, and his neighbor was in the cannabis business, and was like, man, this is where it's at. This is what's happening. You got to get into this business, and so he got into the business, and he was actually pretty good at growing, and he built up quite a business up in Lake County, and had he was disabled himself, so he had worked with the sheriff, and the sheriff had basically blessed his operation at the time, and he had a good thing going up there. So he was trying to share it to help me out, and that's how I got started. I just really, Montel, I'll be honest with you, I don't grow plants very well. So I mean, my thumbs are magically good at killing things, apparently. But mechanically, I've always been, that's my forte
So
for
you
sure.
figured that out. You can't grow, but maybe I can do something when it comes to helping to automate
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
what they're doing, right? Is that what you? That's what.
Yeah, well, when you're growing, you learn you get exposed to all these horrible processes. Trimming is one of the most tedious and horrible things you can do. And we used to pay people a lot of money to come, and then we'd have trimming parties, right? And you just sequester everybody in a home uh, uh, for whatever it is, 24 to 48, 36 hours, whatever it takes to get it done, and because you don't want people going in and out. I mean, even though we're legitimate from California's perspective, you still have a lot of risk and exposure in that at that time frame in that marketplace. So it's cramped and tight, and you're doing all this horrible tedious work, and that was kind of like the thing. Like, there has to be a better way, because I don't like to do it, and that was one of the things that spurred me on. And actually, a friend of mine was doing something else entirely. He was making dry sift hash with a T-shirt screen, and he's like, "Can you make a machine that'll do this for me?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, if you make it, you can keep the machine. Just make me one." And that's what happened. That's what started the company. I designed my first machine, which is called the Alchemist, which is a dry sifter. Um, and then I packed up my kit and went to Northern California, started knocking on doors, trying to figured I could sell these things, and that's how it started.
Gotcha. And then you went from that to creating harvesting equipment. Is that right?
That's right. So in natural progression, right, you start looking at a marketplace. I didn't get a lot of movement on the dry sift side. That's the time frame in which uh, oils and extractions were really starting to come in. So dry sifting really took a back seat, and so it wasn't like going to be a massively lucrative opportunity for me to sell a single piece of equipment. But trimming has always been a long pole in the tent, and that was one of the things that I've been thinking about quite a bit, to how to figure out how to do it the right way in an automated fashion. And I went up in Northern California, saw what people were buying and using at that time. And I was actually on site with a gentleman that they had taken a couple of my other machines on consignment, and so how that goes. It's not real money yet, but
Right.
anyway, yeah. So uh, anyway, I told him, I said, I'll be back in 3 weeks with a better machine than that. And he just looked at me like I was crazy. But I drove all the way back down to San Diego, and then sat down with some young guys from UCSD, yeah, from the engineering department. And we put together some designs on a trimming mechanism, a blade idea, and then built it all together and took it back up. And uh, it was magic, man. The way that it worked um, was so much different. And because the concept of these other machines was tumbling, and
Right.
just and that's nothing wrong with that. It's just abusive to a plant that, as you know, is very delicate, requires a lot more attention, because you're trying to preserve all that crystal and all that delicateness, and the natural way that the flower looks. I mean, there's all this aspect to cannabis, as you know, that is it gets kind of washed out in the manufacturing process, especially when you're using these tumbling machines. But so what happened was, I took it up and I showed it to the guy that it took me a while to get his attention, but I showed it to him, the guy that sold all the other machines, and he stopped and he's just staring at what's going on in the machine, and he looked at me, and I remember this so clearly, because he said, I sell all these machines and I've never been impressed. That's the first machine that impresses me. And that's when I was like, I got it. I actually, we nailed this design. And from there, it was, back to San Diego. I had a small order from them, and that's what kicked it off. I think my first year we did like $60,000 in sales, and that was in 2012. And then 13 we did 350,000 in sales. I actually got a salesperson involved, and we made a little bit bigger machine. And then in 2014 we were at 3.5 million. So it just, because it was revolutionary. I mean, the way that we trim and the way that the machines work, it's just completely different thought around it. And that's kind of how the company has gone. We keep that focus. I have a team, a brilliant team of young engineers who they play SolidWorks, which is a 3D modeling program, like it's a video game, and they're creative, and I let them be creative and pursue their ideas, and then we go through and we work through them, and refine them, and what you end up getting is this a real knowledge base of people who understand cannabis, because that's what we think about first, and then we understand design around that, and then we produce really cool equipment out of that. So it's just been like, step after step after step. And 3 years ago we started telling people and talking to people about, automation isn't just fixing one problem. You've got 3 or 4 or 5, 6 steps that you have to get through. So why aren't you transporting stuff from one operation to the next automatically? And that's where you get automation, right? That's when you start seeing real value in letting machines do work, because no longer do you have people doing all that work. What you have is machines. So now you have operators who can, monitor and continue to keep track of value points in your processes. And at the end of the day, you get a much more consistent product. And so we started that conversation 3 years ago, and we're just starting to see it now. We were at the MJ BizCon. We're just starting to see that real kind of interest in the marketplace, where people are like, yeah, I don't just need a trimmer, I need a solution. And yeah, you do. They need it, because agricultural processing is just not, in this country. You just can't do it and stay competitive from a human labor scale. You know what I mean? I mean, even if you see it even if you go to the fields in California where you see a lot of labor, those are all augmented by equipment now. It's not just hand labor. So it's just the way of the world right now. You have to have that automation involved, otherwise it's kind of, not
Talk
going
a
to.
little bit about the different types of products that you have in the marketplace. Give me an idea.
Sure. So, I mean, we're post harvest. So basically, after you working on some other things, but right now, today, post harvest, we do conveyors that are specifically designed for cannabis. We do trimmers that are very unique. Like I said, they're in a class by themselves. They're the only machine that works the way that they do, and we just came out with a new one that's higher throughput, but still gives you the same quality. We have a sorter, which is a very gentle and delicate sorting operation, so you can do size grading. I have a keef separator, which is the first machine I did, which is basically a dry sifter. We have that in large model also, which is a continuous throughput. We also have a grinder now, which we took 5 years to develop. And this grinder actually, instead of pulverizing or mashing or whipping and beating product, it actually breaks down the product into perfect particle sizing, and it removes the stem. So customers who are using real quality bud for their pre rolls, this machine will do the hard work, which is getting rid of the wood out of it and give you perfect particle sizing. It's absolutely amazing. But that was a 5 year development project anyway. So that's what we have on market right now, and we have a couple other things that are coming out that are exciting. But we can connect from where we are to anything else that you need to do. So, if you want to package or bag, or you want to grind, or you want to go to extraction, or whatever it is you need to do next, because of where we stand in a vital place. We can go from the end of our system to whatever system we need to get to. So that's kind of where we're at.
And all your products are U.S. made.
Absolutely, yeah. So very, you know, as part of my conversation last night with the veterans, it's like that's part of our ethos, right? Is America. We love it, not to the exclusion of anyone else, but there's a lot of pride in this company and in supporting this country and the people of this country and the communities of this country. I buy all my stainless steel comes from the United States, and that's a little bit more expensive, but the quality is there, and it's supporting homegrown industry. We
And you
buy
make
all of
sure all
our
of your equipment, is manufactured with medical grade U.S. steel.
That's correct. Yeah. So we step up. We don't do the 304, which is a standard, which is a kind of your nominal, normal quality stainless steel. But your 316 stainless steel has a higher acidic resistance, and is just an overall better piece of metal. And that's what we chose to use. So I actually went and negotiated with my mill and said, listen, we'll buy everything in 316 if you'll come down on the 316 price, somewhere between 304 and 316. And since we buy in such volume, they were able to do it, and we got a good deal. And so everything that comes out of our shop is 316 stainless. Our plastic comes from Ohio, so it's all manufactured in the United States. It's all virgin high density polyethylene, so it has no additives, no color state preservatives, none of that stuff. It's all NSF, which is food safe. We use some aluminum, and it's all high quality aluminum. We manufacture all the parts in house. I have to buy certain things from overseas because they don't make them here. So we buy some of our electronics from Taiwan, and I do purchase motors from a company called Brother Motor, and they have a partnership with a Japanese company called Oriental Motor, and we do both business with both of those companies. So aside from that, everything else is all sourced from the United States, and take great pride in that. And then add to that, like everything that we have is recyclable. We're about 96, 98% recyclable, and we're about 96, 98% homegrown. So those things are very, very I think are very important to the company. Definitely important to me.
Are you thinking of shifting your plastics over to hemp made plastics or to have
Yeah,
private plastics? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only plastic that we have, and we're actually shifting more away from plastic altogether, um, because the burden of recycle is high. It is recyclable, but you still have to have somebody that's going to do the recycle work, right? So it'd be better to have something that was biodegradable or break down much quicker. And so I find that to be exceptionally exciting. The hemp plastics, you have clear, or you have the same thing that you have with the Lexan. You can get in a hemp based plastic. So when that becomes viable, which it isn't yet, but once it's a viable alternative, yeah, we're going to get all over it.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you did to react to the demands, during the pandemic for PPE equipment. Somebody said you used some of your equipment and changed it over. Explain that to me.
Yeah. So when as you know, the pandemic hit, and no one really was prepared, obviously. But you know a part of I mean, it was this opportunity for me to do what I did when I served. It was like, oh, I can shift some of my resource, and maybe I can have an impact. Maybe we can do something here that will add value. Because you're hearing all these stories about no PPE and all these horror stories from the front lines. And so we just dumped a bunch of time and energy and money into this concept of a tumbling machine that's basically based on our alchemist, but that would contain the PPE, and then you flood it with chlorine dioxide. And so we went down that road and kind of launched it out, and it got stuck in the emergency approval process, and it's still sitting there today. So I mean, you know, we put it in though. I mean, we did it, and Montel. I mean, it sometimes, you know, in life it's really interesting. Sometimes you do the right thing for the right reason, and it doesn't matter, you know. And sometimes that's just how it is, you know. And I think we did the right thing for the right reason, and it just because it didn't pay dividends or was never actually used, wasn't isn't really that big of a deal, you know, because I felt, and I still feel like that was the right thing to do, because you know we had the ability, right? If you have the ability, then you do. If you don't, that's okay. I'm not telling you to do something you don't have an ability to. But as a member of the community, and as a member of the business community and the cannabis community, and the Nevada community, all the, you know, in the United States, I feel if I have ability, then I should be doing that. And so that's what we
Gotcha.
did.
What have you found to be some of the most challenging aspects about being in this industry?
Banking.
Right?
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest. Listen, I mean, for me, it's really we're really fortunate, right? We're ancillary, and so we're not as you know, we're not as impacted by the crazy changes in regulatory issues that are
Yeah, I would
residents
think
there are
that
suffering.
because you really don't touch the plant, you are not selling any plant material.
That's correct.
Selling ancillary equipment should not have a banking ramification. But are you faced with
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
why?
We've had major banks drop us.
Why?
One
What is their reason? What is their
They
reason?
won't tell you. They don't. They're no longer obligated to tell you. Um, thanks to thanks to the say what it was at the Banking Act that under Bush that got done. They don't have any obligation to tell you anything. They can just make decisions based on what they want to. They send you a letter and say, "Yep, based on, you know, the fact that you signed this agreement and said we can change our mind anytime we want to," and so we did. And that's the letter I get. And then they go, here's a check, and you know, we're a multi-million-dollar company. That's a big check. What am I going to do with a check? I can't feed my people. I can't pay my bills. I can't do anything. So that's happened to us twice. We now have a good banking partner. They're a smaller bank, and you know, it's restrictive in some respects, but it's still a good partner. But I still can't get lending. Like I can't get I can't even get a working capital, right? So
But
just
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't. I'm really having a hard time understanding this. You know, when I
yeah,
say that, and I'm not just saying it rhetorically. You don't touch the plant.
correct.
So if
Yeah,
you made a fork and sold a fork to a cannabis manufacturer or
yeah,
cannabis grower to use to eat their lunch with, you can't bank.
that's correct. And it seems, and you know, I mean, I've had these conversations with bankers, and they're like, "Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem, but it is." And okay, well, what can you do about it? Well, they can't. Big banks can't do anything. You know, Montel, they're stuck. They're completely regulated.
Anything
Yeah,
because you are touching the industry, not the plant.
correct. That's correct.
But I
Yeah,
thought that again, I was under the impression that the regulations were such that if you weren't touching, it's like the people who sell lights, they can't
yeah.
do banking either. A
Depends on
lot
the
of them.
company, right? So if a company has a good non-cannabis presence, then they can get away with it. But if you have we market into cannabis, right? So we're not afraid. We've always been upfront about the equipment, what our equipment does. If you know, I mean, literally, if I scrubbed all my social media and changed my website and just said, "Hey, we're
A
Bob,"
hops manufacturer.
yeah, you know, then we could probably go down that road. But um, the problem is, you know, I still have to market, and I still have to reach into my community. I still have to be able to make my presence known. And as much as tight as the community is, you still have to do all this. You know, marketing is everything, right? What your image and what your company looks like is everything. So we still have to continue that push. And so it's just a battle that we've had to fight. And again, like, you know, a company like mine who has a lot of cash turn because we're buying we buy. I mean, look, if you look at what we buy, we turn over, you know, $500,000 every month. That's all supporting other companies, right? That's supporting our landlords, it's supporting my people, it's supporting my purchasing, it's supporting my steel, it's supporting you know, it's all these other companies. They're not having trouble. I guarantee you, my steel provider is not having banking issues.
I do. Well, that's one. I was just getting ready to ask you. It's like, why would okay? If you can
Yeah.
buy the steel legally and he can put the money that you give him in the bank,
Hmm.
you're just
Yeah.
taking his steel and turning it into something else.
That's correct. Yeah.
I mean, I do get it. You want to market yourself, but I mean, these
It,
days, market yourself as a hemp extractor. I mean, I'm sorry, not a hemp.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
hemp is legal.
yeah. Well, okay. You say and that's almost right. It is still quasi legal, and it has the protection of the Farming Act, right? But it's still you're still going to have trouble in the banking community with hemp, and if you're strictly hemp, it's not going to be nearly as bad, but there's still a barrier there, and we looked at that kind of move like on well we'll just say everything's hemp, and the real issue with that was it really didn't change my relationship with in discussing this previous with my banks and saying look will this help, will this make a difference, and they're like no it's not going to make a difference. Um, so I'm not really sure. I mean honestly we can be logical, we're two adult men, we can have a logical conversation. But when it gets to the political level, it just seems like you can't have any logical conversations at all. And you can't work through these details. And it's not just obviously in this one sector, but it seems like you get outside of, you know, of a normal conversation. These people can't think straight, and they're always looking for what's out for me or and it just gets so convoluted. You can't just do something rational for people, right? We've accepted this. Like cannabis is accepted, and I understand that it's not everywhere yet. I get that, but if you look at the polling, we're at like 65% acceptance. In the United States.
It's higher
That's a
than,
yeah, that's astounding, right? What is the deal? Like it's got more acceptance probably than alcohol.
and I would say the same people that stop you from banking are hands out when it comes to you paying your tax dollars.
Oh
Correct?
my God, they get that money right away. Yeah, I pay my stuff on time, every time. All my bills are like that. Like we operate as everybody should, but we operate very, very clean. And all my books are really, really well done, and everything is 100%. We don't take chances because there's the scrutiny, right? You don't want to get yourself into a mix up. I just don't know if we could have, if a company that's in this area could survive something like that. So we just do we just kind of slog along. And like I said, the last banking issue was during COVID. Talk about freaking out, you know they only gave me 15 days.
Wow.
Here's a check, 15 days. You're like, holy shit. I like it's a business, right? We're moving capital all the time because that's what you do. And you you don't there's taking any kind of time to switch that up. It's expensive to switch and change up, and then you miss stuff. And now I've got bills that are late and things are piling up because you're like, oh, that was in auto pay and that was being paid on this, blah blah blah. And it's just a nightmare. And it's stupid. They don't have to be that way. They could do it if they want to. As a matter of fact, Bank of America invited me to the table and then left me in the cold. So
Wow, that's really now, where are you incorporated out of? Are you incorporated in Delaware, incorporated in
we're,
Colorado?
we're in Nevada.
Yeah.
I started the company as a Nevada corporation, even though I was in California when I started the company, and then now we are actually based in Nevada. I have a business building in out by the racetrack out there in Las Vegas.
And what are some of the other challenges you face? Is banking? What else?
Well, just normal challenges. Growth is a challenge. That's pretty standard. Employment right now, finding good people is a challenge. You know, uh, I think that everybody in this country had a pause. I think COVID gave everybody a little bit of a pause, and we struggle to find really good people um, that want to stick. Engineering support in Las Vegas is not as strong as it would be in California, right? Because engineers aren't, they're traditionally there's not a lot of manufacturing in Vegas. A lot's coming. By the way, it's blowing up out there, but um, but the reality is like there's a lot of support, uh, people support that we don't have access to, although remote employees do make that better. But still, that's a challenge for sure. And then just learning how to be a business and learning how to manufacture stuff, and I mean all that stuff was hard. That's just growing pains that I think obviously any company goes through. But Yeah, those are the kind of things.
What are your international sales looking like?
Picking up. I think, as far as North America has always been really strong. Canada has been strong for us, and of course, the United States. We're starting to see Mexico come in, and then all of South America is moving. We've got some really interesting opportunities down in South America that we're trying to get closed up. We're seeing the way that other countries are doing their business and the way they're handling cannabis, and we go, why is the United States so far behind? When Colombia is exporting cannabis and the United States can't get their heads out of their butts to get it across state lines, there's an issue, right? Canada's doing cannabis export contractually with with other countries. Why are we here? This is the hotbed of cannabis. Like Northern California is the mecca, the epicenter, right? Why is it that we're squeezing that out and not giving the opportunities anyway? Not to go all down that road, but I
No,
think that what's happening is
no. I think you should go down that road and let our listeners understand, because what's really ignorant. Just so you know, for 100% complete disclosure, I'm involved in a company out of Colombia right now. I'm
oh,
involved
great,
in a company out of South Africa. Um,
wonderful.
and having these coming out, and I have been doing some B2B work with these companies that have already turned into extremely really good contracts for some of the
Yeah,
vendors that I'm dealing with. And so as we talk, I'm sitting there listening to, acutely and looking at opportunities that I may be able to introduce you to with some of the
that's
business
wonderful.
I'm involved with. But talk a little bit more about the fact that and some of the regulations. I mean, I know for a fact that out of Colombia, they are right now capable of being able to export what they grow. In South Africa,
Yep,
they are exporting what they grow, and they're exporting to several major countries around
yeah,
the world.
right. And that's what's crazy. You have, as that's what's so interesting to me, and I think it's, you know, I don't know what the root cause of it is. It's probably money.
It's ignorance, but go
and,
ahead.
and, and ignorance, and then people not really seeing that the value here, but you're killing an opportunity that for this country to be the global leader. I mean, absolutely no way that we can't be or we shouldn't be. We just have all the depth of knowledge and all the ability and all the innovation. It's all coming from the United States and being exported everywhere. We actually our machines were purchased by Lesotho, the king of Lesotho, to get us into Africa, and now we are now being well established in South Africa, as you mentioned. That's a
I'm
burgeoning
involved with.
marketplace.
I'm involved with a complete disclosure. I'm involved with a company out of Lesotho right now.
Is that right?
I'm a board
Yeah,
member of the company, and yes, absolutely,
it's probably my guy right there, because
probably.
but yeah, I mean that's the kind of the magic of it. Here we are having much more open, normal conversations with countries that aren't the United States, and in the United States, we're having these fights, these little fights from little kingdom to kingdom, and not getting any business done, and you're watching a market destroy itself. Because free markets only work when they're free, and unfortunately, the cannabis market isn't free. It's regulated, and then it's also fenced. Right? You have every state has a border. You can't take it across the border, and so you can only do that illegally or in the black market, and which creates all kinds of chaos through the legal burgeoning legal market, and also puts all kinds of pricing pressure and all kinds of problems all over. I mean, if you look at what's happening in Northern California right now, it's a travesty. These guys are down to $300 a pound on outdoor cannabis. The best outdoor cannabis in the world is being sold because they can't sell, because the market is been collapsed, overproduction and no market, right? So they don't have anywhere to go. Well, if you could just ship it to New York, for crying out loud, don't worry about it, but you
Right.
can't. You can't do that, and that's this is all part of that whole regulatory nightmare. But that's just internal. If we're that screwed up internal, no wonder we can't get the external. When I talk to big companies in Canada, and they're going, yeah, well, we have a contract with so and so in this country, we have contracts with this country, and you're like, how is it that you guys are having that kind of legitimacy, and we're sitting over here trying to figure out if it's going to be legal next month, or if we're going to change the licensing regulation, or what. It's like, geez, man, just open it up, get your taxes, and let's go.
Absolutely. I mean, well, the industry is still in its infancy, though. So, I mean, there seems
Yeah,
to be. a lot of space for growth.
Sure.
What would you suggest to somebody who's an innovator? My degree's in engineering also, and I've got some ideas on a couple of pieces of equipment that I needed to have. I've been thinking about having built for years now, but haven't
Yeah.
been able to like step. How does a person go about turning their ideas into a viable product?
Well, that's the great challenge. I went through this many times in my life before I actually did it, and the problem is that if you don't have the means or ability yourself, you're kind of at the mercy of people who are going to be difficult or maybe usury or maybe take advantage. So you have to worry about that. You're also in a place where there's no real protection for you uh, until you have some money to
Right.
support, right? And that's one of the big difficulties. But
You
the
can't
reality,
patent
right? Yeah, that's correct. It's just crazy. Like there's these companies that advertise on TV and they advertise to help you with your invention, and they don't do anything except for take money, and they don't do anything, like nothing for you in patenting. And then there's this mystery around patenting. It's not hard, guys. It's really simple, but you just need to find the right attorney, which is not easy to do. But for somebody who really is interested, there's three ways that you can get into market. You can build it yourself, and you can knock on doors. That's what I did. You can go to find somebody like me and say, "Hey, listen, I have a product, and I'd like you to get it into the marketplace." And I go, "Okay, well, let's look at the product." And we say, "Okay, well, let's make an agreement on this product. And if it's not patented, maybe we can get it to patent, and maybe we can get something wrapped up around it and make a nice little, licensing agreement." That's another way of doing it. And then another way of doing it is just going out to somebody and saying, "Here you go, give me X for this idea." You know, and those are all valid ideas and ways to do it, and they can be very successful. But um, it's a difficult thing because, again, there's the idea, and then there's the bringing the idea to life, and then there's the bringing the idea to market, and those are all very distinct and very difficult things to do. So doing it yourself is you have to kind of be, I think, like we were at the right place at the right time. It was taken off, and we were happened to be able to get in and happen to be able to build a reputation. Now your barrier to entry is a little more difficult unless if you have name recognition. You can get you can get in easier, but it's harder and harder for somebody who doesn't have name recognition or branding to penetrate. Still can be done. And then there's, like I said, like we do this, we do buy technology, and we do work with other people who are wanting to bring stuff to market. We've done this in the past, but those relationships can be difficult too. So it's you have to figure out how to make that work and what's fair and clarity, and it's always wrapped up in all kinds of paperwork and stuff like that. But those are kind of the ways to do it. If entrepreneurially, don't let anybody stop you. Never let anybody stop you. Just understand that there's ways, and just go down the road. Just keep banging on the doors and keep figuring it out. But just because it's hard doesn't mean it can't be done.
Right. Well, we're almost out of time, but I'd love to hear. I mean, put your crystal ball on for a second. What do you think? The industry is going to look like in a year, 2 years, 5 years?
Um, well, and we've seen a lot of consolidation, as I'm sure you're aware. So that's an interesting situation, and it's creating kind of it's kind of absorbing and creating kind of bigger entities. So that's really interesting to see what that's going to do. um, I don't think that trend's going to go away, but I don't think that you're going to eliminate your craft people either. So I mean, craft beer obviously has a massive resurgence and has become a staple. Like I mean, I don't know how many beer houses you go into now, and they've got 40, 50, 60 beers on draft. You're like, that 10 years ago, that did not exist. It just didn't. You had to go to one liquor store in town that had a variety, and that was, and 20 years ago it was just Budweiser and Coors. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just, but so I don't think the craft is ever going to go anywhere. But you know, um, the consolidation in the larger market, I think that's going to continue to happen, and you already see that as new states come on. You see the big players are in there with local people trying to figure out how to secure licensure and grow into that space. So I kind of see that that's going to kind of trend is going to continue, but you're going to see the kind of the push toward the the product consistency, the McDonald's, and I don't mean McDonald's in a negative way. I mean in a positive way. The availability of a product in any corner of the market that's identical to a product that's in the other corner. And I think that's where we're headed, with big brands that are already big names, big brands who already have that recognition. All they're trying to do now is just make sure that they have the product consistency. Because if you go and you eat your McDonald's in New York, you want to taste like the one you had in San Diego, and that's the same thing with cannabis. It's going to be a lot like that. So I think that trend is going to continue too, and I hope that I hope that it has a little bit more of this kind of crazy growth in it because I enjoy this a little bit. No state comes on, things get a little wild and stuff like that. But once all the states are on board, I think you're going to see it kind of flatten out altogether. And I think you'll probably see regulations kind of become more consistent from state to state. Some point they're going to do interstate commerce and federal.
When do you think that's going to take place?
Oh, I wish I knew, man. I'd be putting money on the table because what's funny is I think there was even a moment when I thought that the President Trump might get on board with the federal side of it, because he seemed like he was a commerce kind of guy. But then, when the present regime came in, I think there was kind of a feeling like, oh, maybe this is our guy, but he was never going to be the guy.
We knew that. I mean, anybody who has a brain should know that he was never going to be a guy. This is a guy who still 6 months before he got elected said that cannabis was a gateway drug. Get the hell out.
Yeah.
And his AG incarcerated more people for minor cannabis offenses as the AG in California than anybody before her. So how did we even get hoodwinked into believing
I don't know,
that they were telling about they were doing something in the first 100 days?
Yeah, we're just gullible. But anyway, so administratively, we can't rely on that kind of stuff, right? It takes the will of the people, right? And we're obviously that should never be the only reason that you would elect somebody. But I think it's funny though because it to me it just illustrates that the party partisan bullshit is just that it's just a bunch of BS. And I think
I don't know if you know this or not, but now recently, Redman and a few people have gotten together and they were able to literally petition and apply for and got federal status for a brand new party that's called the National Cannabis Party. Are you aware of that?
I was not aware. That's really kind of cool. I was not aware of that.
There is now a officially federally sanctioned party that
that's great.
Presidential elections that is called the National Cannabis Party, NCP. Well, you should go up on the
I will.
Website, take a look. I just got asked to be a board member, and I'm very happy to say that I am. And
that's wonderful.
We are trying right now. We're gonna try to push really hard over the course of the next year and a half, or the next half year before the midterms, to make candidates out there running for office recognize the fact that there are people here who want to. We're not right, we're not left. We just want you to understand that the will of the people is that cannabis should be a part of our society, and we want to make sure that you have a stand that is favorable to cannabis nationwide. And also when it comes to a presidential candidate, and we're going to be, hopefully, making a pretty big footprint during the next election to make people understand that we're here, and cannabis is an issue that we want our elected officials to address.
Well, I think that at a very least, Montel, it's going to bring the opportunity to get people aware of people's stance on it, because I don't even know the last time I knew what a politician was actually standing on. I hear some good ones out there. I do believe there's some good ones, but from a general perspective in the national media, I couldn't tell you what somebody actually believes. I get to hear their stupid ass sound bites, and it just makes me nuts. Like, I'm voting on this guy or that guy based on 30 seconds of repetition that this guy has spewed out, and then he gets in a debate, and you're like, you're not debating,
right?
This
is one of these things. Now having a nationally, federally sanctioned party.
Yeah.
Think
Yeah.
about this. This is different than before. So
Yeah.
now all of those national debates that you see on TV, NCP will be present at.
That's great. Yeah.
NCP can hold a convention, just like there's a Democratic National Convention, there's a Republican National Convention, there should be a National Cannabis Convention. And
Sure.
those running for office need to step your ass in there on a stage and tell the people that are there, this is where we stand when it comes to cannabis and hemp, for the future of the country
Yeah.
moving forward.
I think that's great. I mean, obviously that'll help move things forward. But I mean, we know we're not going to see federal legalization for 4 more years, three
At
more
least.
years,
And
at
it may
least,
be longer, yep.
and it may be longer. And so I don't know. I mean, I still hold out hope for the decriminalization aspect of it, because it makes no sense to me that I live in a state that embraces commerce and cannabis 100%, and we promote and we're proud of it, and yet I still have to somehow, the bigger brother government up there doesn't. I mean, how on earth, so I can live by one set of rules, which is normal state stuff, but I live by a set of rules here, and I can't take those rules with me, or when I go next door to my friend across the line, I have to play by a different set of rules, or it's just, I don't know. It's frustrating to me that the federal government is playing this game with this particular issue. A lot of issues, but this one's kind of obviously a thorn in my side,
Right.
because they've talked about safe banking and all this other BS, and it's just, uh, you know I don't know. I just find it to be tedious.
Yeah, they
Just
talk a mean game, but they do nothing. And
do nothing.
they talk the mean game only when they're getting ready to get elected.
That's
Or they're
correct.
running for office, and they turn their back on you once they get there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, my friend?
No, just, you know what? I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I appreciate your service, and thank you very much for that. And to all the other veterans out there, man, don't if you have a dream, this is a great industry to be dreaming in. It's just a great place to be. So,
Absolutely. Well, look, I am so happy that we've had this conversation with you, Mr. Cullen Raichart, the founder of GreenBroz Inc. And you make sure, if you want to hear more from Cullen, make sure you listen to this entire podcast and press that little button down there on the bottom that says you want to. Make sure you can even give us a review if you like. Okay. So we love you to do that. Thank you, sir, for being here. You always have a home here whenever you want. I may reach out to you if I can to see if we can chat a little bit about business down the road.
that's awesome. Always happy to speak with you, and I appreciate your opportunity of letting me on.
Absolutely, sir. You take care. Stay well. Love that family of yours, and we'll see you around next time.
All right. Thank you.
And we'll see you on the next Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments.